Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the season finale of At the Movie Season 3, our independent features season. You're going to hear me do the exact same intro here in about 10 minutes, but that's all right. We have a very special guest today. We are talking about a film called Mechanical Heart, directed by Astro Rys. They are a filmmaker that I have some, geographical connection to. Weird way to say that. We have a lot of mutual friends and acquaintances. We are both have spent a lot of time in Erie as well as Pittsburgh, and we really wanted to close the season out with we love all these films. We loved watching Clerks and seeing what it became, but we really wanted to close the show out with something unique and talk to an independent filmmaker who is doing the things that we want to do.
Mhm.
So they were very fortunate enough to give us their time today. A pleasure to talk to. A wonderful filmmaker. There are still some things on YouTube. I believe Mechanical Heart is still public on YouTube. I'm not sure for how long. Regardless, you should sub to their Patreon if you have the money to, because $5 for a whole wealth of feature films and content is very much worth it. That being said, before we get into the interview, we always rank the movies at the end of the season, as well as reveal our directors for the next season.
Let's start from bottom to top, as we always do. Number 10, Manifest Destiny Down. Even though this is the one that I picked, we talked about it in great detail. Just kind of lost me at times. Number 9, which is surprising, but this is just because the weight of the movies ahead of it is going to be Computer Chess. Number 8 is Room 237. 7 is Resolution. And like I said, these really aren't me saying that they are bad or, exactly. It's just the movies ahead of them kind of like gave me more out of them. So at number 6 comes Blue Ruin, the first episode of season 3. Number 5 is Butter on the Latch. I absolutely loved that movie, and it's sitting right at the middle. Number 4, we're talking about it today in this podcast. Has to be A Mechanical Heart. There's just something I can't even explain about this film, the way I felt at the end of it, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to watch it. 3, Donnie Darko. What else is there to say? We just went over it. Still one of my top films. Number 2, Call Girl of Cthulhu. Leaving with number 1, of course, as generic as I could be, number 1 has to be Clerks, just because it's just the nostalgia that I needed for these last couple months doing this season. So those are on my rankings in no way. Does it really impact what I feel as far as like good or bad on the movies? It's just really when I rank a film, it's how I feel and kind of what I'm left with when it comes time to ranking. So
Yeah, I very good list. Mine is somewhat similar. Was pleasantly surprised to hear Call Girl Cthulhu hit that number 2 spot. That makes me very happy. Um, I would say that when I was doing this, there are movies. My number 9 will shock you, and it's because the movie itself, it has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. It has to do with what I feel like I would watch again or want to watch again. So my ninth film, there's only one film I didn't like, and I think we share that, and I don't
mm,
want to come down on it so hard, so it's pretty clear. But when I say my number 9 pick, again, it's not because it's a bad movie, it's a great movie. The rest of these films had either a different impact on me, or they're films that I would be interested in revisiting.
mm-hmm.
So without further ado, my number 10, Manifest Destiny Down, Space Time. Um, in some ways feels like the antithesis of Mechanical Heart in
Yeah,
terms of making an independent feature, a low budget feature, I should say, making a low budget feature that feels original and that feels tonally consistent and genuine, has some heart. Um, Number 9 for me, Blue Ruin. A movie that the first movie you watched for the season, and a great film, a very taut thriller that is not super fun to watch all the time.
yeah,
I feel like you watch it, and especially if you've seen Green Room, you get it. you're like, okay, like they make feel bad movies,
Hmm.
and they're really good, but they are like
Feel bad.
just yeah,
You're not
feel
gonna
bad.
feel good.
No. Number 8, Room 237. I enjoyed this documentary a lot more than I did the first time I watched it. I love the idea of presenting these different interpretations, whether they're correct or not, for people to think about. Um, it was a fun documentary. Number 6, and this shocked me, was 6, right?
7.
10, 9, 8, 7. Jimmy, you're gonna have to do some counting for me here, bud. Number 7, computer chess. We gotta watch this movie again because I was left perplexed when we watched it, and the more that I have sat with it and digested it, the more I genuinely feel drawn to watching it again.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I'm just very curious to. I
I'd
let
give
it
it a
sit for a
rewatch.
while.
I'd give it a rewatch for sure.
I think that would be an interesting rewatch. Number 6, then, Call Girl of Cthulhu, which means that the rest of the movies are very good because this is just a favorite of mine in general. And to have it at number 6, uh, just one of the most fun movies we watched, I think, and really just shows a love for filmmaking and for genre pictures and making a horror movie with your friends. It feels like that. It's funny. Very enjoyable. Number 5 for me, Butter on the Latch. Loved this film. Short, not easy to follow, but not hard to follow either.
Yeah.
More so, just kind of um, it preys on your feelings. It's a movie where it flashes images that are supposed to make you feel kind of unsettled, and it's very effective.
Hmm.
So I haven't seen anything quite like Butter on the Latch. So that's my number 5. Number 4 as well for me, Mechanical Heart. Just an excellent film. So glad that we watched it for the show. And this is in no way us blowing smoke up Astro's ass. It was a great movie, and it's the kind of movie that an independent filmmaker, watches and says, "This feels attainable to me." Like
Hmm.
you are looking at somebody who started where you were once and where they've gotten to, and it actually really inspires you and makes you want to film and create. So, number 3 for me, Resolution. I had some issues with this the first time I watched it. Gave it about 6 months, revisited it. I love it, and it doesn't all work or add up, but it is a strange, unforgettable experience, and I absolutely just love the writing and the dialogue in it. Um, uh,
No.
two, two for me would be Clerks, a 5-star film, one of two 5-star films for this season. Um, Man, what's there to say that we haven't said already? The nostalgia, you get a little worried that some of it might not hold up, and you know what? Some of it might not, but if it makes you feel a fraction of the way that you felt the first time you saw it, there's just something warm about it that makes you. It's very much a comfort film,
Hmm.
and it's easy to see why it became so successful. I think it had a huge impact on like Judd Apatow comedy and stuff moving forward, which means my number 1 is Donnie Darko, and to commemorate, I would like to show off my brand new Graveyard Goods Donnie Darko shirt. I'm not sure how well that looked on camera, but
Look good. I like that shirt, man. That's nice. Might have to
it,
steal it from you.
it features a diagram of the human body with the portals on the left sleeve.
What is that? An
The
XL? Might need a.
Yeah, it sure is. The numbers written on his arm on the left sleeve, and then it looks like a hardcore shirt because on the back. Let me know if you can read that.
Nice. Yep.
So I picked this up from Graveyard Goods. They're an account on Instagram. They do limited run horror themed clothing, relatively inexpensive for limited run clothing. I think this ran me probably 30 plus shipping, and I think their t-shirts are about 25 plus
That's a
shipping.
solid shirt, man.
Um, Available for 48 hours a piece. So keep your eye out on them. Highly recommend that. 2 weeks, then we are going to take a short break. You can still Lomo Show season 2 starts has already started
Yep.
last Friday, so you can keep up with that. Those will be posted, as well as I think we took a little breather from shooting shooting the bit, but we'll probably re-enter that world for a minute to hold you over.
It'll be this. Well, I don't know. I would just expect everything to come back in that week of October, probably, because after at the movies, and shooting the bit will all return in that week. So just keep
Okay,
an eye out.
let's do that. In this case, we got to pick directors, and I think I know mine. And I am. What do you want to do here? Do you know yours?
No, because I thought we already decided what we were doing, but maybe I didn't. You say your director, and maybe I'll say mine.
Oh, well, maybe yeah, maybe we do know what we're already doing because we've talked about this specific combo this season
Mm-hmm.
before.
But you pick, but
Um,
you pick the right one, so I can say the other one.
okay, for the season, for the time of year, tis the season of the witch. I would like to watch John Carpenter films.
And I, even though we're too stupid to do it,
I knew it, you son of a bitch.
for season 4, I am so happy to announce that for my pick for director, we're doing none other than the iconic Stanley Kubrick.
If you have a request, let us know in the comments because we
Mhm.
may actually take it. We may or not. I don't know. Jimmy may look at the films and make his own decision, but I would say let us start with Halloween in the spirit of October, and also because I would love for the last film of the season to be Eyes Wide Shut, um, as opposed to In the Mouth of Madness, which is a movie I love, but is nowhere near as
Mhm.
important as Eyes Wide Shut. So, um, looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an awesome season.
Yeah, so we'll see everybody October 12th, and that's when we'll start the podcast back up at the movies, shooting the bit, and after the movies. But without further ado, enjoy this conversation with an excellent independent film director, producer. I mean, I don't really know. I don't want to classify them, but
I think all of the writer,
all of the
director,
above.
producer, actor.
So it was a wonderful conversation, and shout out to Aaron here for setting it up and making it possible. So.
Hopefully, we can do it again in the future with more guests and with Astro. So,
Mhm.
without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Astro Rys. We are joined by our friend Astro Rys. How are you, Astro?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. We covered a ton of independent films this season, but they were mostly films that would go on to be not so independent films, things like Clerks and films that would later go on to see, some a very high level of success. So we really wanted to get somebody in who was currently making independent films. And you were the first person I thought of because we have a local connection and a lot of local acquaintances and friends.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate being thought of. Hopefully someday we can I can graduate to the status of clerks and stuff of being
That'd
an
be
ex DIY filmmaker. But as of now, I am definitely in the thick of
yeah.
it.
absolutely, yeah.
I gotta say
So
though, I mean, you're getting pretty close with what we watched, so I definitely want to put that out there. So
Thank you.
it's
It
good.
definitely feels like a definitely like feels like at a point there's definitely been a trajectory, which is it's always nice to see yourself grow as opposed to like looking back on your films and being like, oh, I'm exactly the same as I was
Yeah,
4 years ago. It's nice to like look at your stuff now and even just look at stuff even a year or two ago and just be like, whoo, like okay, like
for
there's some
sure.
momentum happening, which is always nice to see
that's
as an
awesome.
artist.
One of the things that Jimmy and I have been talking about, even on the show, is that for some of the films we watched, you can tell, and I still struggle to put this into words, but you can tell uh, that it doesn't almost even look like a real movie sometimes, like an independent film. There's something about whether it's the cinematography or the camera they're using, and how you get a film to look like a film.
Hmm.
Um, and I was I've seen your work before, but I have not seen Mechanical Heart. And I was just shocked, not because of you, but just because in general it was so good. It looked so good,
Hmm.
and the cinematography was excellent, and all of the camera work by hand was really just felt very much like you were a part of the scene, and it was very easy to look at.
Thank you. Thank you. I think like I I remember like first starting out and making films and like as all kind of young early filmmakers think about is like we all want our films to look like cinematic. We want to
Right.
like, we're making, something with our flip cams or something, and we want it to look like, a Michael Mann movie or something. And I feel like so many people, as they go through like film school or doing their own independent work, they try more and more to achieve like the cinematic look or whatever or something like that, to like make their self feel like quote unquote a real filmmaker or make a real movie or whatever. And what I kind of found as I went through school was, and learning some of the like ways to, just make control your image better and stuff like that, and have more control of your image, like, of course. But I've always felt that, um I felt that embracing, instead of trying to cover up your flaws and make them try to like like put as much makeup on them to make them look as presentable as possible, just looks way more, just usually just looks way more bland, and like most people don't ever achieve what they want, so it's like a dull falling short of whatever they want to achieve. And I think rather than trying to cosmeticize your mistakes, you fully display them and figure out how to make your form of storytelling fit your flaws. And so that way your flaws are not flaws anymore, but you learn how to create your own way of telling stories or presenting images or communicating ideas that fight your own, that use your own flaws to your strength instead of trying to cosmeticize them. And so I feel like
Yeah.
that's definitely like what I've kind of, when it comes to like figuring out how to, get my own cinematic image and stuff like that, I found that embracing the flaws and like the mistakes and the chaotic nature of being a low budget filmmaker, embracing those flaws to create your own cinematic language, actually in vice versa, like through that becomes its own cinematic image. And so I definitely feel like that's something like I've really been very conscious of.
Nice.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like, yeah, definitely. There's something about like sanding down the things that to you, it's almost like when you hear your own voice on the phone or something,
Hmm.
you're like, oh, I hate the way my voice sounds.
Hmm.
You notice that because it's you,
Hmm.
but for other people, that might be the thing that makes your work stand out.
Well, yeah, like an artist, like a lot of my inspiration as a filmmaker comes from music and like musicians, and like, and a musician that I feel really like kind of exemplified that was like Tom Waits, with his voice change throughout his life, because when he was a younger man in his earlier recordings, he had a very um not it was like it was a raspy voice, but it was not an off-putting voice, and like a very kind of baritone uh lounge singer kind of voice. And as he got older, his voice started deteriorating and he wasn't able to sing like that anymore. And rather than trying to sing the way that he did as a young man, he just, and like sing the type of songs that he did as a young man, he like changed up his entire genre and sound and like what he was doing, so that nobody else in the world could sing a Tom Waits song the way Tom Waits sings anymore, because of the way
Right.
he changed the way his music did to accommodate his voice deterioration. And so, and like and like as you see with like other aging singers who try to do the opposite of just trying to do what they used to do, it now it's usually disastrous.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The first Tom Waits song I heard, this was probably like 2009, I think. I used to like raid my brother's CDs all the time, and just
Hmm.
that's how I discovered music. But uh, it was one of his more recent albums, and the first song of the album is Chicago, and I'm not sure of
Oh
the
my
name of the
god,
album. But when I
that's
heard
the
it, I thought it was a Modest Mouse song at first. It was
yeah.
like, this is like carnival music. I
It
was
is
so
carnival music.
enthralled with it.
It's awesome. Tom, if you haven't explored his discography, it is one of like the most rewarding discographies to dive into, I would definitely say. He's one of my he's like I think he's like one of the greatest songwriters ever. And an incredible actor too. He's just like
Yes. Yep.
he's a very cinematic musician in a way, and just the way he writes too. So Tom Waits is a really, as I said, yeah, dive into his discography if you haven't. And also you can just hear the as I said, you can just like hear him physically change throughout his discography, which is very interesting to
Yeah.
experience that for an artist, is to like get a very strong sense of the physicality of the artist himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk more musical cues as well because there were a few in Mechanical Heart that really stuck out to me.
Hmm.
But I would love to talk about some of the shorts that you were kind enough to send us first.
Hmm.
And these are currently, I think, unlisted on YouTube. Do you have plans to eventually publicly release them?
So, they weren't unlisted before at pre like actually earlier this year. They were all public, but so many people asked me like, "Oh, where can I watch your work? Where can I watch your work?" And it's all been on like YouTube for uh, ever since like they were made, so years now. And it's like I don't feel like like YouTube is like the most precise place to catalog and
Yeah, I
and
can see
and
that.
portfolio my work. And so what I just started doing this month was I just did like a $5 Patreon with like I'm gonna be posting like all of my work that I've ever done.
Awesome.
So all of my features, all of my shorts, music videos, etc. will all be there, and then it's just like for $5 you can just have access to it forever of any of them. And so that's why all the links are unlisted right now. Is
Gotcha.
just so I can categorize them in one place.
So do you think
Absolutely.
that's like a better way to get people to come over and watch your work, or is there a different strategy that you are trying to do?
Uh, I don't know if it's a better way. I just for me it's like it's not even about a way of like getting my work seen. I'm very ephemeral about my work where it's like when it's done. And
Hmm.
it's just like I'm not really trying to get like Mechanical Heart or anything like seen by people. Like
Yeah,
Right.
it's there, and if people want it they can have it. But I don't think like for me it was much more of like an organizational thing. I'm really trying to get more organized in
that
like
makes sense.
how I approach my career right now, because I really am starting to have very specific goals and very specific ideas of what I want to do and be doing career wise with my art. And so it's like, I can't just be throwing shit on YouTube and having it getting like, lost into the ether, or like, just forgotten about. It's just like, or like
Yeah.
a lot of my work was scattered before. Sometimes copyright strikes would get it. Like it was just all scattered. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna put it all in one place and stuff. I'm trying and tie it into like there's other things with the Patreon too that I wanted to tie into and stuff, because like I'm starting to do a workshop series. So it's like if people come to see my like come to look for a film of mine, they can also see updates on like my workshops that I'm starting to run, so that they're interested in that. And also there's different writings from different writers that will be published on the Patreon, so it's like people can read it's kind of just like almost like an artistic space for people to
I think that's
exchange
good.
to look at ideas and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it seems like a better way to communicate altogether with an
Yeah.
audience that's, invested.
Exactly, and it's just yeah, it's a way to get like, $40 a
There you
Right.
go.
month.
Yeah.
For
It's
sure.
definitely not monetarily incentivized, because there's not very much money to be made in that.
Right.
I'm not a content creator, it's
Yeah.
like
No.
so it's like, I'm not people aren't going to be there's not going to be swarms of people subscribing to it for content, which is like fine. I didn't want to like make it for that reason. But it's just I'm trying to centralize more of my work, and like, it's not about exclusivizing at all, because it's like I try to make it like $5 like something very affordable and for
Yeah.
Right.
access to it. And it's like it's just about being organized, and like so it's like you can watch Mechanical Heart and then like oh there's my short Jesus right after, instead of it being on YouTube and like seeing like Joe Rogan and suggestions or something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
kind of why I think that's a smart idea, to be honest with you, because especially with YouTube, it's easy for people to get lost after they watch something of yours or
Mhm.
any, on anything on YouTube, and they're kind of not staying there like how you want. But at least with the Patreon, you're building a sense of community over there, so pretty
Exactly.
cool.
It's interesting that you brought up success in terms of like money to be made, or the things that what you would consider to be success, because this is something that I think about a lot too. And I
Hmm.
took like this is like so funny, and this guy will never hear this, so it doesn't matter. But I took a class with one of the writers of Saw 4 because it was the only. They don't come around often. I just wanted to take some kind of additional screenwriting course after college, and I love horror films, and so I just there was this opportunity that I found on Twitter, and I was struggling to find other opportunities, so I said, you know what, I'll throw him $100 and see what he has to say. And I had a question for him because part of our whole mission statement is kind of, as a company, is just kind of wanting to be able to create films without having to relocate to LA or to relocate to some kind of major area or city to break into some kind of system. And when I brought this up to the soft format, he said that he was like, you won't. He was like, prove me wrong. But he was also like, you. That's like, you're never going to find success that way. But I think we were defining success two different ways because we're not interested really in breaking into any kind of studio system.
Yeah, we're not really
I
looking
mean,
for work, I think is the difference between
right.
that conversation.
And so I would be curious on your thoughts in terms of because you obviously love to film an Erie, which I also want to talk to you about a little bit too. What do you think? Is it possible to be a DIY filmmaker that has some kind of impact without having to live in like a major art city, especially as somebody who did spend time in New York? Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
I think most definitely it's possible. I mean, like I feel like anyone who says that is like stuck in like the 70s and stuff when like anyone who like I mean, we live in the age of like like we have like major all of our major like ways of consuming media is like social media, like through TikTok and stuff like that. And we have celebrities like popping up here and there and everywhere and stuff, and influencers here. Like it doesn't matter where they are. It's like people are now more than ever craving content, and that content to keep up with that demand has to come from everywhere.
Yep.
And
Right.
so like if you're like trying to go to Hollywood and stuff like that and like all that jazz and like yeah, but like I don't know who defines success as that anymore, like as that anymore, as you said, like this isn't like the 70s anymore, and it's just like we can do whatever we want. I think what's happening right now is like we're definitely at like the end stages of like essentially like films in Hollywood existing in a way where essentially the last remnants of Hollywood that will ever exist are probably going to be like Disney. Like I can see
Yeah.
Right.
Disney sticking around for a long time, but like in like 20 years or something, like that's probably going to be it. And after that, it's like I feel like there's going to be a lot of closing. Like I feel like the whole movie theater like industry, the idea of like going to the movies and stuff is dying. And so because of that, and like whether that's good or bad is like to be debated and stuff like that. And that's not really a question that I think matters anymore because it's happening. And
Right.
it's like what is we're at an opportunity, I feel like, where we have a chance to either let the cinema die after that because cinema is so linked to Hollywood, or we have an opportunity to start from ground zero and build up, which I feel like very few people creatively at all in history really have an opportunity to do. And so what I really to me, what I kind of have the focus of my life and the success that I try to aim for is essentially being able to make my movies outside of the system because I know the system will crash. And if I depend on the system to make my movies,
Exactly.
I will not be able to make movies, especially the kind
Right.
of movies that I want to make. And so success to me is just making what you want happen. Like people don't realize how incredibly hard it is to make any movie. Like there's like this quote, I forget who said it, but it's like the worst thing about filmmaking is that it's just as hard to make a bad movie as it is to make a good movie. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
it's
we see
like
it now. Yeah.
and it's just like it takes a lot of work to make a movie. And so the fact of like you being able to get this piece of art done and have it look or be what you wanted it to be, that's all that success is to me. Like to me, like I don't really know if there is any way to like define success be like on like a scale level of like any kind of like achievement to get to signify success, because I think that's all very personal to each individual's person's philosophies and life goals. But what
For
I
sure.
think as an artist and what a filmmaker's idea of success should simply be is finishing whatever you're working on currently. Like that should
Yeah.
your number like when people I never have dream projects. When people are always like, "What is your dream project if you had $1 million or something to do?" I mean, I have like joke ones or basic little concept ones in the back of my head, but I've never like seriously had any like deep planned out dream projects because my philosophy is my dream project is the project that I'm working on right now. Like whatever I'm working on right now is what I really want to be making more than anything else. And
Yeah.
so success to me is completing that because like that's the dream project. So like once you do that, so then it's like success is just a constant process of doing it over and over and over again. But that's from an artistic standpoint. But from like, all other standpoints, spiritually or philosophically, that's just so subjective to the individual. So I think anybody that says though that like to be successful, quote unquote, you have to be in like LA or like Austin or New York City. I think that's like horseshit. And this, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can swear
Oh,
on
you're
this or
good.
Oh
not,
yeah,
but
yeah, you absolutely can.
but that's horseshit. And like, I mean, like, it'll make it like, don't get me wrong, it'll make it a hell of a lot easier. Like, it will make it easier. Don't let them like that is a true thing. You're more likely to meet people that want to see your work and all
Yeah.
that jazz. But it is not by any means impossible, or it's not any means like it's not even by any means improbable.
Right.
It's a matter of being able to figure out your work, and then from then on, it's like we live in a global society now. It's like if you make a movie in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't matter you made it in the middle of nowhere. You can send that via email to people in LA or New York or elsewhere. And it's like if you want it to get bigger, you can do that too. It might be, as I said, easier when you're in New York or LA and stuff like that because you're geographically closer. You could run into people, have more coincidences,
Mhm.
yada yada yada. But it's like it doesn't make it impossible or improbable.
Yeah, I think you're
For
100%
sure.
right there because a lot of times, the old school thought is you have to be in there like where it's happening. You have to
Mhm.
run into somebody at a dinner. You have to hopefully that you meet them at like a convenience store or a bar, but we're in such a different time now where it's easier to get, your
Mhm.
ideas somewhere or even your films to be viewed now.
I think the one big thing, and like it's like, is the idea, and this is what comes into, and also I think excuse other people's opinions of what success is. It's the idea of making a living off of something, and I think I think if your idea of success is making a living off of film, I do think it's incredibly difficult to do it somewhere that's not a more urban area and stuff like that in regards to like people define making a living, like when I say making a living, I mean like paying your bills for the rest, like, for the rest of your life or something like that. Like, I guess I know, I guess I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't. I mean, I guess there are ways you could make a living well off of film, like, maybe in a place like Erie or something, like doing commercials or like doing like, um,
Like
news anchor
freelance
work.
video work
But
or
like
music
I
videos.
don't think there was that's the reason why I moved to New York is I mean, like, I have my goals with film and stuff, but I do wanna make a living off of film. I don't define my success off of making a living off of film, but what I want if like, what I have is whatever I make my living off of is very much, like, on the back burner of, like, the priorities of my life, but, like, everyone wants to make a living off of something, and I would like to
Mhm.
make a living off of film, and that's kind of the reason why I moved to New York is because I don't know if I could make a living in somewhere like Erie or even Pittsburgh or something making the films that I want to make. And that's just because like some people get into filmmaking because they love films and they love the craft of film. Like they love they just want to work in the movies, like they just love every part of it. For me, like, I honestly, like, don't really have that love of the craft that other people have. Like, for me, I love making films not because I love the process of making movies. I like making movies because it is, like, the most concise way I can express whatever I have creatively in myself, and it just so happens to be film. Like, I don't have this sentimental attachment to the medium that some other people do, where it's just like they don't care if they're working like, setting up lights on a set, or, getting running coffee for a director or something, or being a PA. It's like they just love to be on set. And there are jobs that like that in smaller like more and more so every year it grows and stuff. But that was just something that it never really interested me. Like I'd rather like what you call it, there was when I was home for a summer once, like there was a job posting that worked for as a cameraman for the new local news station, and I decided to deliver pizzas instead of doing that, because I would have rather delivered pizzas than be a cameraman for a local news station. It's just like
Yeah.
I just don't enjoy it on a non-artistic. I only enjoy film artistically. There's nothing like craft wise that I enjoy. It's like I enjoy it because I love the art of it more than anything else. And so, I mean, I kind of went off on a tangent
No,
there,
you're
and I
fine.
apologize.
No, but no, that's
But
it's enlightening for sure.
there are material conditions that I will say, like, that I'm not going to disregard and stuff. Like, it would be incredibly hard for me to make a living doing my films, and like having my films be the thing that financially. I mean, you could, like, as I said, like, send your stuff to like Los Angeles or Hollywood and stuff like that, and like make it from there. But it's like you're gonna have to go to Los Angeles
Right.
to sell to like do interviews, and you're gonna have to
Yeah,
go to Los Angeles or New York City to premiere it there. It's like you can't, because it's like you can like still live here, but it's like in order to get it other places, you're gonna have to like go other
yeah, you're still
places
gonna
to
have to
get it.
make the trip. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that's what I mean more so than anything else. And that's just because of the state of things currently.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you say about not having like not that you don't have passion for the craft, but more so having passion for the expression that it gives you, kind of, and the catharsis. Because the first thing that I noticed when watching the body of work that you sent us was just how different each of the pieces are,
Mhm.
and so it's almost like the opposite of looking at a genre filmmaker. It's like looking at somebody who uh, in a very pure sense, you just go from story to story or whatever you want to tell with this
Mhm.
project, and you tell that story, or you put what you want to film, and then, as you said, it's kind of that one's finished and it's on to the next one, and it might be something that's completely different, but there's not really anything defining your style in the sense of like tying it down to a specific genre, or something like
Mhm.
that. You know?
I always tell people like don't be afraid. I always say people just like don't be afraid of other genres when they're doing their films, in regards to like not like doing films of other genres, but rather like people are all like, I talk to other people and they're like, oh, I'm worried they're doing a serious film or like some like weird psychological movie. Like, oh, I'm worried about putting in this there. It might be too funny or something for the vibe of the film, or it might be too, saturate or too actiony. And I'm like, just do whatever the film calls for. It's like
Yeah.
genre is just something other people put onto a movie. It's not like a rule or anything. It's just like it's a box to just try to help you categorize something, and it's like it's not a real thing. And it's like that's everything in my life, whether it's like films or just music or gender and stuff. It's all about destroying any sense of there being categorization or binary or any ways of classifying, and realizing that these are all just constructs that we create. And that film, I think, in order to exist purely as an art form, it needs to exist in its own exist, not disregarding those constructs, but being aware being aware that they're merely constructs.
Right.
And so it's like that's why like with my upcoming film like Bad Summer, like it's I when people say like what kind of movie is it, I really like don't know what to say, because it's like a lot of things, but and then also it's like none of those things. It's just got like there's a lot of it's just it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
the genre is like it's the type of movie that it needs to be. Like it's funny. Like there are scenes
Yeah.
that are very funny, and like if you watched like a certain 10-minute chunk of the film, you would think this movie is like a stoner comedy. And then if you watch like another 10 minutes of it, you would think it's like a neo noir film. And it's just like it's and I'm not trying to like say all that to like, like try to like just make my film like sound like a Kanye West kind of like genre bender.
Right.
It's just the idea that I never am really trying to be conscious of genre when I make a film.
Yeah, I noticed it. I mean, in Mechanical Heart, a lot. I thought there was a lot of moments of levity and scenes that really made me laugh. Um, so many great performances in that film, and so interesting for me to see so many local faces. When I was watching it, I was like, "That's Ben Hyman's apartment," right? And I was like, "No, I'm going crazy." And then I watched through the credits, and I was like, "That's definitely Ben Hyman's apartment."
Yes, it
Um,
was.
and but there's also moments that are very unsettling. I love what you did with a lot of the audio in
Mhm.
times where Lance was going to deliver his monologue or was having those flashbacks. So it does a very good job of balancing these aspects of um, everyday feelings that people go through, whether it's having a sarcastic conversation with a friend to having a panic attack kind of moment and
Mhm.
experiencing that in front of a group of people. So let's dive in. I want to talk about the shorts a little bit, and then we'll talk about Mechanical Heart a little more.
Okay.
So the one that I have the least context on is Allie. And so I'm just curious, was this like a project for anything specific, and how recent is it?
So that piece, I think the YouTube video title of what I said was a Lee, which that wasn't the actual title of the project. That was like a file that I never posted publicly, so I just gave it
Okay.
like a junk file. That was for my friend. Their name is Ali. They're a performance and visual artist from Nashville that I met while I was there, and they're incredibly talented. But they were doing some performance art piece and needed some like different submissions for visuals and stuff like that. And so they gave me a prompt essentially, and that they gave me really no direction, just like a simple prompt. And I made that video, which I titled, it was like Love and Zen or whatever, which, but at the end of the day, I don't really think it needs any title. But I made that with, and the prompt was essentially just I had to I had to I had to have somebody clean me, and we had to say I love you to each other, and that was the only prompt. And I was really interested in the concept of just like, being able to show the same kind of I being able to show the same kind of love that you have for others towards yourself. And so not in like a, Instagram, like,
Right.
treat yourself kind of way, but like truly like not not judge yourself, and not and just kind of exist as yourself. And so I just made that of me running around in the muddy yard and running the sprinkler, and I couldn't bring myself to have a video of me saying I love you to myself because I thought that would be so corny. And so I just decided to flash the words on the screen and have it mean it to myself or anybody else watching.
Yeah,
And
it was
so
very. It felt very joyful. I
mhm.
Yeah.
thought that was the obvious takeaway. And is it exciting for you to collaborate with uh, other filmmakers, especially having someone else be in the driver's seat for their project?
Mhm. I love collaborating. I just I love collaborating with people who like actually want to collaborate, who like they don't want it to be like, I think like a bad form of not a bad form, it can be used in an interesting way sometimes, but a way that often leads to sloppy collaboration is when it's like two artists trying to be both do their own thing at the same time and make it come together. And I just think that it's just like that's just too it often is just not very, it's just too, you see that there's two brains in it, and it just
Right,
feels very schizophrenic in a way. And what I really enjoy, and the types of collaborations I really enjoy, is like instead of like us being like, okay, I'm gonna do my thing and you do your thing. It's like, well, let's like figure out what our thing is. Like,
Yeah.
what can we both uniquely make that only us two can make? And
yeah,
so, in that way, you, instead of like being this dual-minded, like confused, like egos at battle piece, it's like something new. You create a whole new kind of artistic voice that wouldn't have existed before. And like I used to be such a such a fascist when I was younger with my films where I just wanted to be like, like Orson Welles or Stanley Kubrick.
Right.
And like, everything has to be this or that. And I'm like, that's dumb. Like it's all about I think the best art at least is the art that you can just let go of and lose control of it and just let it be what it is. Because essentially at this point, art to me is not about creating anymore. It's about bringing about what already is and just making it material.
Yeah.
So is that something that you decided that you needed to kind of like pull back the reins a little bit from yourself and not be so much like Kubrick, or is that someone that you were working with kind of was like, hey, we need to chill out a little bit here?
Um, it was a little of both. Um, it was like I never had a moment where like someone was like, "Oh, you need to chill" or something like that. Like I've
Hmm.
always had very good relationships with my cast and crew, but it was more so like what you call it, me and a good friend of mine on one of my previous features. I think it was Paper Planes, but we were we got into a very heated debate over credit, over like the writing and like all that stuff. And like we got so heated over it. And this is like a very good friend of mine. And we got so heated over it. And I just like realized I'm like, why do I give a shit? We made the fucking movie and it looks awesome. Like who cares whose name, like everybody, it's just like it's like it doesn't really matter. The film is what it
Right.
is, and whatever who did what, it's like it doesn't really matter. It's like, and so that was kind of a moment where I was like, okay, like maybe I need to like stop having. I used to have this idea that like it was like very auteur, like if you had to have your hand in everything and control every element or else it wasn't like sincere to you. It was like diluted or whatever. And it's like I think that that's just it's very I realize that it's very neurotic and narcissistic obviously, but it's also just very it questions why are you pursuing art. And like and some people would still answer like, so when I mean is like why do you do art, is that I believe that there's two reasons that people do art, and um it's either to express themselves, or it's either to express themselves they because they believe how they feel is art, or it's about it's about creating art that stands alone as art and it's almost outside of the self. And I had I guess the realization that like for me to make film films that felt like they mattered and felt like that there was something beyond just myself, I needed to like almost completely separate myself from the art, where it was like this is no longer mine anymore. This is like the world's in a way. Like like nothing but like my ideas are not my own. My ideas are merely a product of the world around me. And so art, that's where I'm saying like how I view art is like very like I guess like in a similar way how like a sculptor would say they're not creating a marble figurine, they are merely getting the figurine out of the that is trapped inside the marble that is already there. And I think that like to me great art is art, everything we need for it is all right there. It's just about synthesizing it. I'm not creating anything, I'm merely just bringing aware or bringing into a material way what already is. And so I'm sorry that was very, I might have gotten very woo woo off that point, but
No, but
um
it's interesting. There's it's not as intensive as what you just said, but even in Mechanical Heart, there's a struggle between Jack and Lance in terms of essentially why they perform and why they value art and theater, and
mhm,
doing
mhm,
it for an audience versus doing it because it's something you have passion for.
mhm.
And that's something that I think about all the time as well. You
Well,
know,
I think I think that definitely like that film was kind of like the introductory kind of like discourse into that, I think, for me. And I think, you know, I made that film when I was 2020, and like that was definitely like the beginning of a discourse. And it's like 4 years later, it's like that film was like kind of like one of the first films that I was like really beginning to like let go of my creative control of a film and allowing the film to be what it is. And after that film, more and more I began to understand why I loved what I did so much. Because
Yeah.
like I think the film makes a statement about passion that can be about anything. Like, you know, you could apply that to sports, or like if you wanted to be a geometry person or something like that. Like geometry person, I don't know why I use that example. That's not even a job. But what I'm really interested in now, and what I'm like talking about more, is like more about like making art specifically. And I'm very interested into like, and I'm beginning to as I get older, more and more begin to understand that I'm not just passionate about creating art. I'm beginning to understand like why I am and what about art that I find beautiful. And the more I understand, the less concerned I become about myself and my ego and like my attachment to a project. Like my ideal world would be in like 70 years, I don't even have to put my name on work anymore. It's just like um I'm very influenced, as I said before, by like musicians and stuff like that. And um John Cage is definitely somebody who I consider one of the more influential artistic figures over myself overall. And um, the way he viewed music was so outside of himself that like some people spent, I don't know how much you know of John Cage's music or whatever.
I
He
actually
was
don't.
Really? You should check him out. He's an avant-garde, modernist composer from the '50s, but, he would make pieces with, like, the sounds of, like, metal crashing or, like, tape loops, or, like, there's a infamous piece that he did called 433, where it's just a person sitting at a piano for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and the silence of the room is the music. And people would spend like all this time trying to psychoanalyze and like figure out what like all the sounds meant. It was like, oh, it's complicated because it means this and this. And he would finally be like, no, they're just sounds. They're just it's just sound. Like they don't mean anything. He said in an interview, he's like, I don't he says, I love sounds just the way they are. I don't want my sounds to pretend that it's a bucket or in love or the president. I just appreciate it for what it is. It's so outside of himself. It's like something that exists in the natural world. And I see film, I think film can be viewed in a similar way. I'm still trying to, there's still so much I try to understand and figure out how to contextualize it in a much less material or egocentric way. But the more I become fascinated with film and how it operates and just loving it for what it is, the less I become concerned with my personal input into work, my ego, my expression, or like anything. I just want whatever I create to be the best thing that it's meant to be. Cause like that's what I feel like I'm not making my movies anymore. I'm just, as I said, just pulling all these things that already exist and making it into like a product the way, you know, like you know, a blacksmith turns raw metal into like a sword or something like that. It's a way of just taking
Yeah.
what already is and transforming it.
No, definitely.
It's interesting. I noticed this is maybe a little bit more tangible than what you're talking about, but the use of found footage, or whatever you want to call it, but existing footage in both Jesus and Mechanical Heart,
Mhm.
and obviously different reasons. With Jesus, it gives the film some context for people that may not be up to snuff on Gigi Allen. Jimmy, did you know anything about Gigi Allen
Oh
before you
yeah.
watched this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
There
Wait,
were a
I
lot of
was
there were a lot of people that saw that movie at the premiere and didn't know Gigi Allen was a real person. And then like I would tell them like they just thought this was like a guy that I created for
right.
this movie. And then I was like, that was a real person. Like, yeah, so Gigi Allen died in 93. And people would be like, that was a real person? And I'm like, what
Yeah,
did you think
it's
we were watching?
right.
Like,
I was shocked at the accuracy of and not to bring up sore subjects, but the man who portrayed Gigi
oh,
Allen,
I don't care.
I was shocked at and it had more to do with you than him, but just at how you were able to bring him to life for those scenes. And the contrast between the news clips, the infamous news clips, and then seeing him in these modern environments was just so fascinating to me. Um, I it is revealed at the end, and we don't want to spoil this because we do want people to go check it out. But
I mean,
the
you can talk about Jesus like all you want. It's not really a film to spoil.
Right. It's so when you first sent it to me, because I do know about Gigi Allen, and I am probably share the same kind of pseudo interest in just in like extremity and extreme people,
Mhm.
not in like a way that you condone their behavior or the things they say, but just how fascinating it is that this person even existed.
Yeah, he threw shit at people. That's interesting.
Right. It's
It's
crazy. Yeah.
interesting. You're crazy if you don't think that that's like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, that's
Yeah.
interesting."
Right.
I'm not a prude, like, come on. Everyone's like,
Right.
Whatever."
So I was like, so that was my going into it. I was very, we live in a world where we talk a lot about how we deal with problematic artists and problematic public figures, and Gigi Allen certainly being more extreme than most. I did not know, where the short film was going to go or how it was going to end. And at the end of the film, you do speak a little bit on your feelings of Gigi Allen and why you um, chose to do your thesis on him, and it was a journey and an intense one, aptly, because he was so intense. But what initially drew you, assuming that that is something that you kind of figured out your relationship with throughout production? What was the initial spark or thought or thing that attracted you to, I think I want to do a short film on Gigi Allen?
So, initially, that wasn't that I didn't come up with the idea for that thesis film until a week and a half before I had to pitch it. Because initially I was working on this script for like almost like a year for my thesis. And it was like a completely different, like it was completely different. It was like, a conventional story, beginning, middle, end, characters, dialogue, yada, yada, yada. I was going to film it in like either Erie or North Carolina. And like, I was working on it for a year and it just I just didn't like it. No matter how many times I wrote it and rewrote it, I just didn't think it was, like, at all, like I just thought it was, like I thought it had moments, it had great little moments and stuff, but it was not a complete thing, and no
Right.
matter how many times I tried to revise it or edit it or add things or take away things, it just never was, like and I just wasn't happy with it.
Yeah.
And I was like and it was, like, 2 weeks out before I had to pitch this thing. Like, I was just like, "Oh my god, like, maybe I'll figure it out, like, learn to fly falling down or whatever." But then there was just one day where I was like, "I can't do it." This is my thesis project, it has to be, I've paid too much money to go to the school and make something that I am not
Right.
fully behind. And so I immediately was like, all right, let's shit can it. And I put it in the garbage can in the back of my head. So I'm not working on it anymore. I'm not editing it anymore. And I was like, okay, I need to take a shower to clear my head. And in that shower, within like 5 minutes after that, the idea for this film had come to me, and I was like, I was like, this is what I have to make, like within 5 minutes after having this idea. But I was interested in Alan specifically around that time because I was in a I was at NYU at the time. I was in my senior year, and I was taking a course on directing experimental theater, and we had to do this assignment at the end of the year where we had to make a performance art piece based off of this Kafka poem called Messiah. and it was all about the concept of Messiah. And at the time, the first half of my, I mean, I guess my senior year in general was a very rough time for me mentally, for various reasons that I discuss in the film. And I I was very I was in a very self-destructive place, and the idea of self-destruction and, like, being drawn to, like, just decadent flames, how that was a way how that felt like an answer to me to, like,
Yeah.
this despair that I have was, like, to almost throw yourself into a destructive fire, and I became very interested in and then like I remember like some weird ass like article or whatever I had read had some like weird facts about musicians or something, and there was one that said that Gigi Allen's birth, like who I this time I knew who Gigi Allen was, but I didn't really have like a hyper fixation with him. I never had a fixation with him, but I wasn't like at all like
Right.
interested in them at all. But I saw this fact. It was like Gigi Allen's birth name was Jesus Christ Allen, and it was because his father had a vision that he was the second coming of Christ and named him that. And the reason why he got his name Gigi was because his younger brother Merle couldn't pronounce Jesus, and so he called him Gigi, and so that's where he got Gigi from. But I know he changed his legal name later in life, but his birth name was Jesus. And so I remember like having this like crazy idea in my head of just being like what if what if his dad was just right and he was just the Messiah? Like
Right.
what if his dad wasn't like a crazy, a sexually assaultive, like manipulative, insane person, and he was just right that his son was the second coming of Christ? And I'm like, what would the implications of that be about like
Yeah.
what the point of existence in life is? And I realized like to me like Alan kind of emblemized like the ugliest face of like what that self-destructive force truly looks like. And I guess like he was somebody who lived his life in accordance to those values entirely, because when we live and we have these self-destructive urges, we don't always act upon them. We have better impulses to not, throw ourselves in front of a bus or something like that, or like do something destructive to ourselves, because we're able to have restraint and we're able to have a like, perspective and logical thinking. But Alan was just somebody who had the basically just had his id just spoke, and he just listened and he just did. And I'm always attracted to extremes, especially real life extremes, because we forget that like they exist and that they're real. And it's like when we form our philosophies on life or how to judge or how to understand people, they have to be applied to even the most extreme of people. And it's like
Yeah.
how do we reckon with the idea of salvation for someone even like Gigi Allen, or what that means for all of us? And so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, these ideas don't just apply to figures that are easy to analyze or easy to understand morally. And I
Yeah.
and I think like I think if you're afraid of doing that, I just think you're immature, because that's just as I get older, the more I get older, the more I realize that like there's no way to categorically try to analyze the world morally, and try to discuss it in a as I said, I talk about everything is about smashing the idea of binaries and talking about good and evil,
Right.
salvation and damnation on the way of a binary. It's just like you're living in like a 16-year-old understanding of the world and how people are and act. And I think art needs to reflect the realities that we live in, and not just reflect it in like a nihilistic like this needs to be seen, but we can't in order to in order to vanquish any evil, we need to understand how evil works and why it works. And I think
Yeah.
if I think we're too afraid to look at the I think the reason why we don't like to look at those people like that is because it makes us realize that humans are capable of doing that, and by virtue of that, that we are capable of doing that. And people don't want to acknowledge that. They want to see those things as anomalies and not applicable, and the rules of the rules of psychology or morality or spirituality do not apply to them because they are just so far out. And it's like, no, as far out as you are, they're still a human. And the ideas of
Right.
psychology and psychoanalysis and morality can still be contextualized within them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I did my thesis on Kanye West, actually, interestingly enough.
I
And
remember seeing that. I watched you present on that.
thank you. It was 2016, 2017.
Mhm.
And things have gotten crazy since that was like right before
Yeah.
shit hit the fan.
That was lucky for you, probably for
Yes,
doing that.
very,
That would have made your thesis a lot harder.
yes.
Or
And
more.
so
Oh, keep going. Sorry.
no, it's very interesting. I think about this now because there has been. I mean, I'll be open about. I still listen to Kanye West. I enjoy his music. I don't condone a lot of the heinous shit that he's said and done recently, but he's undeniably this huge pop culture figure, and so I'm
Mhm,
always going to be kind of curious when he has something to offer.
mhm,
But I've had this realization listening to his newest album since it came out, and that is that I think that as enjoyable as it may or may not be for some people, it is interesting that his behavior seemed to correspond with a decline in artistic quality
mhm.
for a lot of people, and
I would agree.
it makes me wonder. When all is said and done, in 10 years, is anybody going to care about Donda? Is this monumental release that he tried to build up with these three massive listening parties and bringing out terrible people and setting himself on fire and all this stuff? Are people really going to remember that because the music itself didn't actually do anything new or push any boundaries? I only think of that because it was so. I felt the way that you did, shocking and interesting to see Gigi Allen's gravesite just completely, Jesus, hit my mic here, completely subsidized, turned,
Do you know?
downsized
Do you
into
know
this
why?
flash in the pan almost type thing. And it is an eye of the beholder thing, because I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that still ride for Gigi Allen. I'm sure not as many, but I'm sure there are those people, just like there's people that still ride for Kanye West or whatever. But it
Mhm.
really does make you think about the longevity of these people and the shock tactics they use to try to uh, get you invested in their performance.
Well, exactly. Do you know? It's very funny. It's very funny. Why? Do you know why his grave doesn't exist anymore? It's because too many people were shitting on it and pissing on it. The cemetery had to remove it because people were literally shitting and pissing on it all the time. There's photos. I looked up photos of people do it. It's crazy. And when they are right. There are acolytes. There are still Allen acolytes. When we got there, there was a framed picture of him there, clearly lit by, and there was a bottle of Jack Daniels left there, and there was an emoji, squishy poop emoji thing on top of
Yeah,
his grave.
right.
And that was all that was left of his grave. So there are still acolytes, but I think like I have a different Asher today would not have made Jesus at all the way I would have then, but that's because I'm a different. That's what you're like. Every film is like kind of a snapshot of who I am at that
For
moment, and
sure.
as you said, it kind of is constantly changing, which I like about it. And I like that Jesus. I like that today I wouldn't have made Jesus because that means that I'm constantly changing, which is good.
Right.
Um, but I think to me the meaning of the ending and of Alan's grave not really meaning anything anymore and slowly will disappear in time is that like it's the ephemeral nature of like even like giving this person the time of day or even like thinking of it's almost kind of like a negation of like the whole film that it's like it almost kind of like I almost like feel like it makes the film feel so silly in a way, but in a good way where it's like none of this really even matters, where it's just
Right.
like in like 30 years we're all just gonna be like our who knows what will happen with our bodies and who knows like what we'll care, and it's just like I guess people will say people will remember the acts and stuff like that, but over time that fades too, and that's kind of
Well,
like
it's
where art and action really need to exist. That's where I was kind of talking about earlier with film and it existing outside of the self, where it's like the film and the art or actions that last the longest are the ones that exist outside of a person because people and memories die. And
yeah,
so and you can't stop that, but if you can create a piece of work that lives outside of yourself, that is not contingent on your existence,
yeah,
that is when you can make something profound, and that's what at the end of the day, Gigi Allen is not profound or like or at all impactful at all culturally, is because he left no art behind, he left no impact behind a couple pissed off people on reality TV and stuff like that. And in like, 50 years, I feel like, in 50 years, some, teenager might get a little like Snapple fact about him or something like that. But
right.
it's like there'll be another transgressor, there'll be someone else to fill that role. It's an ephemeral thing,
Always.
and like living your life in like a self-destructive way is just like, and like the living a life like Alan is just like so futile and pointless.
Yeah, to see him, I mean, the greatest juxtaposition that I can think of in that film is seeing his, the arrogance of saying on live television, like, I will own your children, to, flash forwarding to his grave being removed because people won't stop shitting on it. Like, that is
Exactly.
just, that's, at the moment, it was uh, such a transgressive thing for people to hear, and such an anger inducing thing for people to hear, and he succeeded in riling people up and causing problems, and you flash forward and none of it matters. None of it
Mhm.
matters. It's just, it's very yeah, it's very interesting.
It's very, Ozymandias. That's kind of like the
Yeah.
vibe that I felt, and, like, that's what I feel like is, like, he's, like, yeah, the Ozymandias, the king of shit that no one will remember,
Mhm.
and it's just, like, there's no that's what I'm saying is, like, the point of the film is that there's no glory in, like, trying to be a conqueror, but there's no glory either in destroying yourself.
Right.
The only glory is just existing and being, and as I said, creating and doing things that are outside of yourself. And that's essentially like I kind of ties into like the work that I'm making now is that I feel like I'm trying to do and act and make things that are outside of the self so they can live beyond me, that
Yeah.
they don't just have relevance or matter just because they're tied to my existence or the people's memory of my existence.
So then, a quick personal question before we move on to Mechanical Heart, and you can tell me to fuck off if this is too personal. But
Uh,
going through a period of self destruction, making this film and concluding it the way you did it help you pull yourself out of that place that drew you to it initially?
No. No, it did not. I'm gonna be honest with you.
That's no, that's why I'm curious. I'm curious.
No, it did not.
Yeah.
I don't believe that art has to be therapeutic, though.
Right.
I don't believe that that's the inherent meaning of art because I believe what art is about is asking questions and they don't necessarily have to be answered, but it's about posing questions. And by the mere fact that like the questions that I wasn't able to solve them by finishing Jesus, but the questions that were posed by making Jesus were questions that haunted me and stayed with me for like the next year to come. And
Yeah.
because I was
Absolutely.
aware of these questions, though, it gave me meaning and I was able to grow from them. Yeah. A bad mushroom trip changed me more than that film changed me. Uh, but
Yeah.
but I don't think art has to be transformative. I think it just has to be what it is. Like the idea of because if you go into a piece of work wanting wanting it to be something, then by virtue you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what you want it to be. And instead of it being what it has to be. Like sometimes if you're going in like if you're going even if you're in something like therapy or something like that, like if you go to a session and stuff like that, you may spend 8 sessions and not get anywhere and stuff like that, but it's the fact that you're doing and you're
Yeah.
expressing and you're working through it, and that's what I see, like, art as, is, like, it doesn't have to be, like, the answer. I mean, like, there's plenty of artists, like, who made great work that seemed very cathartic, and it clearly wasn't very therapeutic, that we've lost, like people Elliott
Yeah.
Smith and stuff like that. And it's like, I I think, like, if the concept that art was therapeutic were real, we would still have artists like Elliott Smith or Nick Drake, etc. It's like, I don't think that it has to be therapeutic. I think art is just merely something that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm definitely glad I made it. As I said, like, I made the film that I had to make at that time. Like, the Jesus was everything it needed to be at that
Yeah.
time in 2019 when I made that film.
So, transitioning into Mechanical Hearts, and this is actually even has one foot a little bit in the Jesus camp, just because of the, and again, you don't have to go into details if you don't want to, but because of some troublesome production, we we have yet to expand beyond like 5 minute shorts, but we've been filming for how long now, Jimmy?
Well, intermittently, like probably 8 months.
Yeah.
Dang.
And so like we are still very obviously very young to it and learning. And we are approaching our first actual short film in terms of something that is,
Uh,
like a 30-minute short film.
Mhm.
And the idea of
Actually, I think it's a
working with other.
year. Actually, like next
Wow.
week, like
Okay,
like this month, I think.
nice. We typically film between ourselves and a couple of close friends, but
Mhm.
in terms of working with other actors and what it takes to, if you are used to only directing yourself and a small group of friends or something like that,
Mhm.
do you have advice for working for the first time with a larger cast or people that you might not be familiar with?
So like, working with, like, newer actors and stuff, like people, so yeah, I had that experience. I've had the good and the bad of those experiences. The bad being Jesus, where I had to fire my actor, and the good being, my with Bad Summer, the main actor of the film is, an actor named Malik Childs, who I had no personal relationship before the film, and they've become one of my closest friends through doing the film. And so, like, it can go any way. I think the most important thing, though, whenever you're working with an actor and casting them, is, like, having them be aware of, like, what you're trying to do with this film. What kind of film are
Yeah,
you trying to make? Are you trying to make, like, is this, like, because I think directors, I mean, all creatives have an agenda. Everyone has an agenda with what they're trying to do with a piece of work, what it means for them, what the work means for others. And as long as you all, like, understand, like, what you're all trying to do and stuff like that, then it goes a lot more smoothly. I think, like, the difficulties I had with my actor and Jesus was just because they were a nut job. Like, they were just like actually insane and making people uncomfortable on the sets. And when it's things like that, you just have to put your foot down, because
right,
it's just like your set is your family, and it's like
Hmm.
it's if someone's not making someone in your set feel safe, then it's just like you got to put your foot down.
for
But
sure.
um when it comes to, like, when I was working for the first time with Malik, it was just like he was asking me a lot of very good questions about the film, which I was really happy for him to ask. Like, he was asking, because, like, we weren't friends. He was, like, asking me, like, why I was casting him, like, why was I interested in telling the story, yada yada yada. And so he was very good in that way, in regards to, he was finding that information out for himself, because he wanted to figure out if, like, he wasn't just thinking of this project like, oh, I want work. Like, he was like, okay, I want to think about this, and, like, if I do this, like, I want to you want to work with people who want your project to exist. You don't want to just work with people who want to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
definitely.
actors who just wanna work. They just want work. They don't they like, I would rather work with a much pickier actor, because it's just like they really, because if they wanna do your project, then you're gonna get good stuff, instead of someone just showing up and doing their job.
Yeah, just
Definitely.
going through the motions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm, exactly. I mean, that's like, and it was very that's why it was nice that Malik actually like kind of was like much more inquisitive than I was in the beginning and stuff, but kind of like very much opened me up to like be ways to communicate with actors and like the kinds of questions that I should be thinking about when talking to actors and being conscious of what they're thinking of as well. I think it definitely helped a lot that like I did theater growing up and in high school. Like I do think like you don't have to be a good actor to be a director, but it helps to know how to act if you're a
Hmm.
director.
Definitely, definitely.
Like, it's just like you don't have to be, you know, freaking Daniel Day-Lewis, but if you like, if you can act a little bit, it'll help you so much more in understanding like what actors are thinking of.
Absolutely. Mechanical Heart shot in Erie, as well as Bad Summer, correct?
Yes.
Yes. What do you enjoy about shooting in Erie?
Um, I think Erie as a city as a whole is like a character of its own. And I just really love the character that it is. I think it's so interesting and unique, and I think it's a character that is very universal in many ways, but also like so niche at the same time. And it's also incredibly cheap to film in Erie
Yeah,
compared to New York.
for
And
sure.
like I have a lot of connections, and it feels like whenever I'm home in Erie, I feel like I'm like in a playground almost. Like I just feel like I'm just like okay, like I can just do whatever the hell I want. Like it's
That's
like
awesome.
Yeah,
I know how to finesse, I know how to get like I know how to like like I know where how to get anything like out of the city because I just lived here for so long. I know all the side
yeah,
roads, I know all the little secrets and stuff like that, and it's like it provides me with a lot of really good resources. And I think like having it exist as a character as a part of the film is very important, which is why like in Mechanical Heart and like in Bad Summer too, like I don't ever try to make Erie look like a generic small town. I have a lot of things signifying that this takes place in Erie, Pennsylvania.
yep,
Like the main character in Bad Summer just graduated from Gannon and stuff like that. Like it's set in Erie. These films exist in Erie, and I think a lot of filmmakers when they try to film in their hometowns or film, you know, in smaller towns to save money, they try to like make it like generic, you
Hmm.
know, like small town. It's like, no, this is Erie, and there's nowhere else that could be like Erie.
Yeah.
And so that's I really like shooting there.
yeah. I think too. Like, I mean, we were just talking about how Panos was featured in Mechanical Heart, and that
Yeah.
was like amazing to
Yeah,
see.
that
And
was really cool because I'm not from Erie,
Mm-hmm.
but I've spent my fair share of time up there, and I was like, I ate breakfast right there,
Mm-hmm.
right where they're sitting. I was like, that's
They
cool.
were so cool at Panos too. Shout out to Panos. That they
yeah,
were so cool about us doing that.
and I mean, just a gem of a find, that footage of the Erie news broadcast, the singing and the. I don't know where you dug that up. For a minute, I questioned whether it was actually real or if it was
Yeah.
shot for that purpose, like
I
of making
don't
this whole thing.
I don't remember where I found that. I did not shoot that.
Yeah,
I don't know where I found that. It was like it's on YouTube somewhere. Like
yeah,
I went down some I th- I think I was really like stoned one night and like I was just like looking. Actually, no, I wasn't because I wasn't smoking weed when I made Mechanical Heart. That was before I smoked weed. So I was stone cold sober going down a YouTube rabbit hole. So that's how you know it's really bad is when you're sober going down to a
yeah,
rabbit hole. And I was like walking, like watching people like people doing like a lights on tour of the Wacky Shack when it was like with the light when they were doing maintenance. I don't know why. And then in the suggestions, it was like news jingle thing, and I was like, this looks funny, and it
yeah,
was hilarious. And so I found that it's only got like a couple hundred views on YouTube. It's a gem though.
That was really
yeah,
refreshing
absolutely.
to see. It was nice. It was a nice little break in in the film that made me laugh. So
Mhm.
I
It
definitely
was
I
a good
appreciate.
way of.
completely.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I thought it was an ideal way of like indicating we're going back in time without doing like a 1975 or something like
Right.
that at the bottom and stuff. Just kind of just like, but also as you said, a nice little break and stuff and a little laugh.
Yeah, I definitely
I gotta ask
appreciate that a
you.
little bit more than just flashing it up on the screen. Though
What was it?
I said I definitely like appreciate these cues more as opposed to just being like, this is where we're at now. This is the
Mm-hmm.
time. It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta ask you about a couple of the shots in this movie because, like as I said, we're still learning,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I was amazed at the either crane or drone shot of McDowell
Mm.
the field. How did you accomplish that?
That was a drone shot. That was
Okay.
done by in collaboration with believe they're like 814 Aerial, I think they're called. Um, what's his name? I think Nick Samsel's his name. Um, he operated the drone for that, and he was very kind to lend his talents for that. But that was just shot on like a like a commercial drone you can like get off of Amazon or something.
It was so smooth. I mean, it was amazing. That was it was one of the first indicators that I was watching something that was going to be very ambitious. Um,
Well, that's like I learned my lesson from paper planes, which I don't think I will when I post on the Patreon and stuff like that, I really don't care for my like earlier features for a lot of different reasons, logistical, artistic, yada yada yada. And so it's just like that stuff I think is gonna be just for friends and family and stuff.
was
But
that directly before this paper
those were
plane?
Paper Planes was right before this film, yeah.
Okay,
Not right before, but like 2 years before this
right.
film. But there's a drone shot in that film that it was like so it looked so cool and stuff, but like it really didn't like mean anything. And like I just realized like going into film, I think like going into film school like made me hate those films because it made me realize like how like unoriginal a lot I was thinking was at the time. Going to film school, like that was like one of the only good things about film school. I tell people don't go to film school after spending way too much money. I'm trying to save their
I
wallets
tell
because
people not to go to journalism school, so
exactly.
I'm in the same boat.
But before the one of the good things about film school is it gives you a big fat fucking ego slap, especially going somewhere like NYU where Martin Scorsese's children go to and shit. And it's just like you just are like, oh, like you're a plebe. Like learn to do better. And so Mechanical Heart was like made after like my first year at NYU. And so I definitely there was a lot after my first year there, like I definitely was like trying to be much more intentional with what I was doing. And like I I was hesitant to include the drone shot because drone shots at the time were so big because they were becoming cheaper commercially, and it's very easy, like, to make a shot that nearly before would be impossible to get without a big budget, but because of that, it was becoming oversaturated and just used for the sake of it, and so I was very, like, hesitant initially to have a drone shot, but I thought for Mechanical Heart that, like, the beginning needed a very and it needed it was like a 2-hour movie. Like I needed people to like want to stay for this thing. And
Yeah.
so I was like, all right, we're gonna break out the drone for this, but we're gonna make it cool. And so that's what I tried to do.
It succeeded. I thought it was amazing. And then there was another shot um, where middle, like 20 something Lance and Jack are fighting, um, and the camera falls down the
Oh, that's what I was
steps
gonna bring up. Yeah, no,
and
Mm,
it
yeah.
lands perfectly so that you can see, it does the out of focus kind of person leaving
mhm,
thing. And I was so impressed by that because I couldn't seem to find like a cut or how
mhm.
you manage that.
So there is actually the jig is up. There is a cut there. uh, so what I did for that was I had the camera like on a tripod down the hall. It was right next to the steps at the top of the step. It was actually like by the top of these steps, but I had my DP like have a hand on on the panhandle of the camera, but like sitting on the floor so it wouldn't move or anything to make it like still. And when Steve, the actor for Lance, comes I still told him before to hit the lens of the camera with the bag, and that hitting of the lens was gonna be the cue for John, my DP, to immediately whip pan to the right as if the camera was about to fall over. And so we cut on that, and then I took, my cell phone and I turned on the video camera and I threw it down the stairs. And then so after I threw it down the stairs, um, I took the camera and I had like a little wedge on the floor that would prop it up. and I dropped the camera onto the wedge so it propped like that. And then I just walked away. And then I let Josh, the actor for Jack, do the rest of the work for that scene. But then I just put it all together in the edit to make it one clean thing.
That's yeah, that shot stuck out to me. It really really blew my mind. We are getting to the point now. I feel like after a year, and even earlier than that, because we finished our first season of shorts. Geez, in May, June, something
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
And we did 10 different shorts. And I feel like by the end of it, we were starting to get more comfortable with um, less standard like stationary shots and doing more
Mhm.
handy cam things and
Mhm.
um but that was just like it was a very cool shot and it made me very curious to ask about it and to want to learn to think more and to think outside of the box and consider doing things like that in the future. So
You can do it's that's my perspective is that you can do it. You can do anything with a camera. You just need to figure out how to do it.
absolutely.
You can do anything. You just got to figure it out. That's the hard part, but you can do it. Just like
Yeah.
it's always and that's the fun part though is figuring out how to do it more than anything else. Like
Yeah.
I always looked up to like filmmakers like Sam Raimi and stuff like that who would like create like steady cams with
He's
like wooden boards and shit like
yeah.
that. Like that was like those are my role models. And
Yeah.
like even if I'm not necessarily making those types of films, like the way they worked and like the idea of like having no limitations and like even if that means you have to use duct tape or whatever to do it. Like I remember there was a shot in a music video that never got released. I don't think it'll ever get released. It's out of my control now at this point. I don't know why. I think there was supposed to be like some claymation or something, and I just don't know if it ever got finished or something. But it was for like a Pittsburgh band. But there was a shot where I wanted a mirror in front of the camera lens, but it to be stationary and tracking somebody next to the behind the camera, but you would see the person in the mirror, and then the person would push forward and smash the mirror, and then you would see that you were looking at was a mirror. But the only way to get a mirror in front of the camera and for it to not move while we were tracking was we took a ruler. We had like a tripod and we put the camera on the tripod, took a ruler and duct taped the ruler to the side of the camera. And at the end of the ruler, took a hand mirror and duct taped the hand mirror to the ruler and point and then zoomed the lens so it was the hand mirror was taking up the
Yeah.
entire image. And like you look at I'll have to like find a picture of it. It's like I'm holding like a contraption. And like it was
Right.
like a 5-second shot. It was like totally not worth the effort, especially because the video probably is never coming out. But it was so much fun doing it. And it's
Yeah.
like it didn't really matter that it's only a 5-second shot and
Yeah.
I maybe could have done it's just like to me, it's just like it was just so much. It's like the process of having a vision and just figuring out how to do it by any means necessary. It's like it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, and working the brain, that knowledge is going to stay with you in terms of things you do next and the next challenge you overcome when you're shooting.
Mhm.
I what I maybe kind of a generic question, but as we kind of start to get closer to the end of this, what did you learn from even if you are not a huge fan of paper planes? What did you take away from that project that you carried into Mechanical Heart? And what do you feel you took from Mechanical Heart that you carried into Bad Summer?
Well, Paper Planes was like as I said, I kind of said earlier, like that was the film that I had gotten into some arguments with someone involved about like all of the creative ownership or whatever. And that whole incident like really like put me kind of like checked me into perspective of stuff of like how I wanted to approach Mechanical Heart differently. And I worked with the same people as I did in Paper Planes and Mechanical Heart, and so it was like it worked out wonderfully. But I think I took a lot like just like of like I guess like learning from like the work ethic and like really much like throwing throwing out this idea of having to be like an auteur or something like that. Because what I realized is like the less I tried to be an auteur or something like that, the more I became one, and the more my
Yeah.
work became more like that. And it's just like it's the idea of just like the best work. Like if you're meant to be something, it'll happen, but you can't try to be it. You just have to be it. And like the less and like what I took from Paper Planes to Mechanical Heart was like the less I tried to make an Astro movie, the more it was an Astro movie. And so like that was what I really took in with Mechanical Heart. And also like I think I remember like something that I took from Mechanical Heart going into Bad Summer was I'm and something I'm really constantly challenging myself to this day is I'm really trying to really diminish the importance of dialogue. I'm really trying to become a much more I'm trying to convey much more information with an image than with dialogue than I used to. And I just remember like looking back on my old phones and just seeing like how heavy of a crutch and stuff like we use I mean, it's not a crutch because it's how we talk and how we naturally communicate. But the big thing that like I've been really like thinking about, I guess like been thinking about for a long time, but between like Bad Summer and Mechanical Heart was like film is a visual and auditory medium. And it's like if this was meant if we were meant to communicate the ideas by words, it would be a play. But it's not a play,
Right.
it's a film. And so there's a lot more moments of silence and narrative ambiguity because I've chosen to sacrifice exposition for visualization. And that's something I think I'm just going to do more and more as I get older. But every project, like, it's very weird because every project feels different, but every project also feels the same. Like, it all feels has the same energy. Like, it was very bizarre, like, having, like, a team and like actors coming in from New York because like all the main actors and the line producer was from New York and they came in and like coming into Erie and like I was like worried like having these like New York people that I had was gonna like almost kill the kind of punk fun vibe I used to have on my sets. And it never does. It always feels like it felt like I did when I was like, 15 years old, but like
Right.
better. It's like it was a great experience, and I hope that continues the rest
Nice.
of my career.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I only have one other question or two other questions for you, I think. Jimmy, do you want to? I feel like I steamrolled a little bit. Do you have anything you would like to add or
No,
ask regarding?
you touched on those. I guess my only question I was thinking when you were talking about New York to Erie is what's the difference between and like you getting allocations? You said Erie is almost easy. You can do whatever you want. Like how is it different between New York and Erie?
It's hell. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad. Like I hate it so much. It costs so much money
Hmm.
because it's not like Erie where it's like filming a movie in Erie is like a novelty. It's like, ooh, a movie's happening. Like, okay,
Right.
I'll do. Here it's like, okay, we had Martin Scorsese and we had Jim Favreau here last week. Are you willing to cough up 2 grand to film in this coffee shop? Because someone else, because what is it? Law and Order Special Units victims unit will pay more,
Yeah, I was
and it's just
wondering
Right.
about that.
like I shot one of my junior year film in a school. And it was like in Erie, I could shoot at McDowell like for nothing, just through like having connections and like having like knowing the principal and stuff, and them remembering me and liking me. But in like New York, it's like I had to pay like $600 for like 4 hours of filming in this school. And it's just like, and it's because like it was, and it's like you need permits for everything. And it's just like, it's really, people just want money because they know they can get it. And it's even worse
Yeah.
in LA. It's even worse
Oh
in
yeah.
LA. And so it's like, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of phone calls and a lot of getting cash or finding some way to work out a deal with them or something. Like the sets in New York were not that bad, but it was because like the majority of the stuff that I shot in New York for Jesus was either on the streets, so I didn't need a permit for that. You can shoot in the streets of New York if you don't have anything on sticks. So if you don't use a tripod or you don't have lights, you can do it without a permit.
Okay.
Um, but the most of the stuff, like the indoor stuff, was shot at a defunct DIY venue now that doesn't exist
Oh wow.
anymore. But I was fortunate because they were a DIY artist venue, so they were a little bit more sympathetic to the film and helping us out financially. But like even that was still pretty expensive, and like that's kind of like one of the biggest things that prevents me from filming in New York. Honestly, too much. Like I've only filmed like
two major pieces, like two pieces of work that I would call like actual pieces of work and not just like exercises. Like I've only filmed like two things in New York, and they cost me so much money.
Yeah.
So,
Do you feel like getting the cast to come in too, was that a challenge at all when you were talking about all of your
oh, it
talent
was
coming in?
logistically a challenge. Like we had to fly them. Like well, no, we didn't fly them in. The line producer drove um, from New York with all the cast members from New York, and we got lucky. We knew somebody who owned like a B&B, I think, and they were willing to like let us rent it for like 2 weeks, and for not a very bad price. And so we essentially all of us just lived in this B&B for like 2 weeks.
Nice. That's awesome.
It was kind of cool though. It was like it definitely brought like this very much communal vibe and sense to the set where like we were living together and making this movie. So it was like we were just living this film out.
Wow, that's really cool. I really like that. That sounds awesome.
Sorry, I had to switch location so I could plug in my laptop charger.
No worries.
We both enjoyed the film. Not to put words in Jimmy's mouth, but we talked about it and absolutely loved the film. I Something that I loved personally about it was just that it felt. I think that there is a sometimes a self seriousness that permeates independent filmmaking, especially with like younger filmmakers, and feeling like lately I feel like even studio films I've seen a lot of like what I would call feel bad movies that are like purposely like, yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
horror movies are like this, and I love horror movies,
yeah.
but so I think that there is kind of sometimes this idea that if somebody feels like maybe they have to prove themselves, they will do something that is very serious. And not that this film isn't serious or doesn't have its serious moments, but there was so much levity in it, and I felt like it was a film that was not afraid to uh, be a film about redemption, and to be a
Mhm.
film that had these really like wonderful, joyous moments. The last scene really blew me away in Mechanical Heart, seeing all of the actors portraying Lance together, and seeing the dancing and everything. It just really came together to me as something that was um, joyful, and especially after so many parts of the film are talking about being a fuck up and making mistakes in life and whether those are redeemable or not. To have a moment like that at the end of the film felt, as an audience member, very satisfying, very gratifying.
I'm
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
go on, go
I
on.
know. I was just saying, just to add to that, I think like this was the first film in a little bit where I actually like felt connected to it, like legitimately, and it was really nice. Like watching the like, I was actually extremely invested into it. So by the time it got to the end, I was almost like sad it was over. But
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad y'all enjoyed that. It was a very wonderful project to make. And I think like what you're saying about, filmmakers taking themselves very seriously, too seriously, I think it's true. It's like, I mean, I think I take shit too seriously too. I mean, like I clearly, I mean, think about this shit a lot and talk about it metaphysically, which would some would call pretentious, but whatever. But I think for me, it's like when I'm most depressed, I laugh at myself when I'm depressed and stuff sometimes too. It's just like nothing, as I said, I'm all about the idea that like binaries don't exist, that there's humor and depression and humor and melancholy and joy. And it's like it all exists like as is. And that's why I'm like, I don't try to like make it a happy movie or a sad movie or this is just like
Right.
it's what it needs to be, and whether it has moments that are dramatic or very funny or scary or whatever, it's just like that's what anything is. And
mhm.
I think to say life is just one thing is pretty foolish and very like very one-sided. And that's what I try to capture. I That's, as I said, like art outside of myself. I'm no longer trying to just capture my perspective, but the perspective of what it actually is.
Right. Yeah. To not be afraid to. There's this myth that everybody talks about and sees about an artist having to suffer or be miserable to create their best work, and not that there wasn't a very real, self seriousness is okay. It's okay to want to have a serious film, and it's okay to put depression into that and to put struggle into that, but to also not be afraid to show the other side of the spectrum emotionally, and how things can sometimes work out, or the closure that you can get by actively trying to work on yourself and fix yourself,
But
uh, resonated with me a
that's what
lot.
I don't believe in happy endings. I believe in real endings. Like I don't ever try to like I didn't want to make Mechanical Heart end with like a huge turnout comes and it's like, he gets an act
Right.
a big acting deal and stuff like that. Like no, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in real life. Like no one shows up to your shows. Like you've played the shows where like you open and there's like two people there and stuff like that. It's like that's real life. Like that
Yep.
happens. And like to pretend that like the point of life is to get that big achievement or whatever is like just irresponsible, I think, and
Yeah.
stupid. But
I
I do
agree.
believe, but I don't believe that that's the idea of like the answer that you thought you're looking for was not the answer.
Yeah. One last question: were you listening to a lot of Radiohead? Were you listening to a lot of Kid A when you?
You hear you in different whatever films I'm listening to, you tend to hear a lot of what I'm listening to at the time. When
Yeah.
I Kid A was on my mind. I don't know why. I'm not even that like I'm not like a big Radiohead stan or anything. I don't have anything like I don't dislike. I like they're just like another good band to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Those songs really felt like they really worked really well for the film.
They
And
absolute. I mean, the national anthem is so propulsive, and for that scene, it's a perfect fit. And then to have a song, motion picture soundtrack be the closing song, it just felt very full circle to me. And I'm a big Radiohead fan,
Mhm.
and I also caught Barlow in there as well, and those
Yeah,
are mutual friends, acquaintances, and so
Barlow's music's also in Bad Summer. There's a lot of local music in Bad Summer, actually. Local
Invader
Pittsburgh near me.
Lars, right?
Invader Lars is in the soundtrack. Wave Trails is on the soundtrack. Um, Elias, Eli Kerr's
Yeah,
music. A lot of really cool stuff on there. Some
Nice.
local and local New York music. I always try to feature local music forever work from wherever I'm living. So there's also music from artists in Nashville that I knew, and there's music from artists in New York. Just a lot of local music from different communities in Bad Summer. I'm very
yeah.
proud of the soundtrack of that film.
What can you tell us about Bad Summer that, other than that's not going to spoil it, or other than what you've said already? Is there anything that you'd share?
Yeah, I mean, it's like my thing is like I'm not afraid of spoiling it. I just don't want to like tell people what to think about it. And
Yeah.
that's
For
why
sure.
it's just like I just like so I apologize for not like wanting to go in depth or like screen
No,
it and stuff.
no,
I just want anyone going into it to just go in and just like pick what
definitely.
they want. But we filmed it over the course of the pandemic. It was very difficult, but we were able to do it and no one got COVID the entire time, which was very nice.
Amazing.
Um we filmed it was filmed in Erie, and it's actually the first film that first feature film that I've ever done that wasn't written by me. It was written by my friend. Um, it came to me, the script was came to me in a finished form. I didn't even know he was writing it. The writer, Chris Stevens, who's a friend of mine from North Carolina, sent me the script one day in like April. Well, no, it was May of this past year, and he was just like, hey, I've been working on this script. I don't plan on doing anything with it. I just like he would just write scripts for fun and send them to like different director friends to like just read them and give critiques, but he never really planned on doing anything with them. Like he had a couple serious ones. I was working with some directors, but like these were just kind of like hobbies. And I read it, and it was originally set in his hometown in Tennessee, and I was just reading them like this whole thing could be shot in Erie. And then like it just something really resonated with me with the script and story, and I texted him and I'm like, "Are you planning on doing anything with this?" He's like, "No, not really." And I was like, "Can I maybe make a movie of this in like 3 months?" He's like, "I don't." He's like, "Sure." Like, I don't know if you can, like, if you'll be able to pull it off, but like, yeah, like if you can, go for it. And so we kind of just went right into production mode from there. But it's about this kid who just graduated college and is working their high school summer job at a pizzeria where they hire somebody that vaguely recognizes them from high school, but they don't really they were just kind of an acquaintance, someone on the side they didn't really know. But as you get older, the connections that you have become less and less that you kind of, especially in a workplace, that they kind of latch on to each other and become close friends. And eventually they have this conversation that where both characters become very vulnerable in their moments of becoming vulnerable. Our main character begins to see things that concern them about the other character, and concern them in regards to their where they concern this other character essentially um, reveals a part of himself that Sterling, our lead, wasn't aware of, and Sterling begins to wonder if a his fears or anything to be founded are just neurosis, and b if he's at all culpable or responsible for in any way for his own association with this person. And so the film essentially follows this relationship between these two friends, and our main characters kind of descent into obsession and paranoia to the point where it becomes unclear who's even if Sterling himself is in fact a neurotic. And so it's just kind of like a duel of egos between these two characters, all set in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
I can't wait to
Excited.
see it. It's we would love to have you back on sometime to talk about it and to maybe even just cover another movie. I know that you're a film watcher. I follow you on Letterboxd. We both recently watched Spider-Man 2 and both recently
Yeah.
loved Spider-Man 2,
Oh my god, it holds up so well.
which made me happy. And I also saw that you recently watched Mean Streets, which was one of the very first films that we watched for our show. Um,
This Mean Streets is like this is like a it's a joke, and it sounds like a very I didn't come up with this joke, so it's not it sounds very narcissistic, but the joke we had on that one of the actors said on set was like this was like the Zoomer suburban Mean Streets was this film. And so I don't know how true that is, or if I would claim that, but Mean
yeah.
Streets is definitely a very very important integral film to my life.
Same.
Thank you so much for your time. Anything that you would like to plug? Where can people keep up with news on Bad Summer and the Patreon?
So, you can follow me on Instagram, but like I know I hate social media, so it seems so transactional. But like if you really want to support me, you should check out the Patreon. It's just T Films, but T is spelled Thee. It's pronounced like tea the drink though. But you can go look up T Films on Patreon. It's like $5 if you want. There you can also join. I set up a Discord of all different artists who want to partake in workshops that I'm arranging, where I'm essentially having different artists from all over the country and world do different workshops on their crafts. Our first workshop that we'll be doing over Discord is at the end of the month on the 25th. It'll be live and will be archived. So even if you miss it, you can watch it over if you join the Discord. But it's going to be done by Aliyah Sher.